I was crouched in a bunker during a mortar attack in Afghanistan when my phone lit up with the email that would destroy my world. As explosions rocked the ground around me, I stared at divorce papers from my wife of 10 years. But it wasn't just the betrayal that broke me. It was discovering who she was with that made me question everything I'd ever fought for. My name is Mason Williams, 35 years old, U.S. Marine Corps Staff Sergeant with 3 combat tours on my record. I believed I had the perfect life, a career serving the country I love, a Spanish-style home in San Diego with an American flag proudly displayed on the porch, and a wife, Allison, who I thought would be by my side until death did us part. July 14th last year, I was huddled in a forward operating base in Kandahar province. The temperature outside was 115 degrees, and we'd been taking mortar fire for 3 hours straight. My hands were still shaking from the adrenaline of the firefight when I checked my phone during a brief lull. That's when I saw it. The email had no subject line, just 5 cold words in the body. Sign and return to my lawyer. Attached were divorce papers, 18 pages detailing the end of my marriage, sent to me while I was literally fighting for my life 7,000 miles from home. My battle buddy noticed my face and asked if I'd been hit. In a way, I had been. A direct strike to the heart that no body armor could protect against. In that moment, with the taste of dust in my mouth and the smell of gunpowder in the air, my personal war had just begun. What I couldn't know then was that the enemy wasn't just hiding in the mountains of Afghanistan. He was sleeping in my bed, wearing my clothes, and betraying everything the uniform stands for. I met Allison in 2010 at a veterans fundraiser in San Diego. She wasn't just beautiful. She was magnetic. Long auburn hair, green eyes that crinkled when she laughed, and a way of listening that made you feel like the only person in the room. She was a successful real estate agent who specialized in helping military families find homes. When she approached me that night, she didn't ask the typical civilian questions like, "Have you ever killed anyone?" Instead, she asked thoughtful questions about what kept us going during deployments, about the brotherhood of the Corps. Our first date wasn't dinner and a movie. I took her to the USS Midway Museum, where my grandfather had served during Vietnam. She listened to every story, asked questions about every aircraft. When she reached for my hand in front of the POW exhibit, I knew this was different. 6 months later, on a perfect California evening, I proposed on Coronado Beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and purples. I'd arranged for a military buddy to fly a small plane overhead trailing a banner. "Allison, will you be my home base?" When she said yes, fellow Marines hidden nearby erupted in cheers and popped champagne. She cried as she promised to stand by me through every deployment, every hardship. "I know what I'm signing up for," she said. "I'll always wait for you to come home." Our wedding was intimate but meaningful. I wore my dress blues with the sword my father had carried at his own wedding. Allison wore a simple white dress with a blue sash. Her something blue was the same shade as the Marine Corps flag. My unit formed the traditional sword arch as we exited the chapel. The senior officer whispered, "You got a good one, Williams. Don't screw it up." I joined the Marines because of a family legacy going back 3 generations. My grandfather served in Vietnam, my father in Desert Storm. On his deathbed in 2008, my father made me promise to uphold the Williams family values: honor, courage, fidelity. The Corps reinforced everything he taught me. Being a Marine isn't just what I do, it's who I am. And Allison seemed to embrace that identity alongside me. She volunteered with the Family Readiness Group, helping other military spouses navigate the challenges of deployment. She attended every ceremony, wore Marine Corps red to every event, learned the lingo and traditions. She became as much a part of the Corps family as I was. Before each deployment, we had our ritual. We'd drive to Coronado Beach at sunset to the exact spot where I proposed. We'd renew our vows informally. She would say, "I'll be waiting right here." I would promise, "I'll always find my way back to you." Then we'd bury a small memento in the sand, a coin, a note, something I could think about while overseas, knowing a piece of us was still together. For financial security, I maintained a separate emergency account. something my first platoon leader advised every Marine to do. Hope for the best in your marriage, plan for the worst, he'd say. I never thought I'd need it. That foresight would eventually save my future. January 2022, I received deployment orders for Afghanistan, my 4th tour, but my first since being promoted to staff sergeant. 9 months away from home. As I packed my gear, Allison seemed different, more clingy, more emotional. She bought me expensive gifts, a new watch, custom dog tags with our wedding date engraved on the back. At the time, I thought it was love. Looking back, I realize it was guilt leaving breadcrumbs I was too blind to follow. The first month of deployment followed our usual pattern. We video called 3 times weekly on a schedule that worked with the 12-hour time difference. Allison would show me around the house, pointing the camera at new decorations or our German Shepherd Duke. She'd share stories about her real estate clients, ask about my missions, though she knew I couldn't share details, and end every call with, "Come home to me." By the second month, I started noticing subtle shifts. Our hour-long calls shortened to 30 minutes, then 15. Her excuses seemed reasonable: an early house showing, a late client meeting, poor internet connection. But the pattern was undeniable. I began noticing environmental changes in our calls. Previously, she'd walk around our home while we talked, settling in the living room with its wall of military photos and memorabilia, my "I love me" wall, as she teasingly called it. Now she only called from our bedroom, with blank walls visible behind her. When I asked to see Duke, who typically shadowed her everywhere, she'd say he was sleeping downstairs or at the groomers. The Marine Corps teaches situational awareness, noticing changes in your environment that might signal danger. I applied those same skills to my marriage from 7,000 miles away. I started checking our joint bank account more frequently, a habit I'd developed during previous deployments. Small financial discrepancies appeared. A $300 dinner at Fleming's Steakhouse when Allison typically preferred casual dining. A weekend charge at La Valencia Hotel in La Jolla, just 20 minutes from our home. A $500 shopping spree at a men's clothing store. When questioned, she'd say they were client lunches, a girls' weekend, gifts for her brother. My battle buddy Jake Reynolds noticed my increasing distraction during missions. After one particularly close call where my delayed reaction could have been catastrophic, he cornered me in the barracks. "Williams, what's going on? You're not here, and in this place that gets people killed." Marines don't typically share personal problems. We're trained to compartmentalize, to push through. But Jake and I had saved each other's lives in Fallujah years earlier. That creates a bond that transcends typical military stoicism. I showed him the bank statements on my phone. "Something's off with Allison," I admitted, "but I can't put my finger on it." Jake nodded slowly. "My cousin went through something similar last deployment. Start documenting everything. Trust your gut." By month 4, Allison's text messages had transformed completely. Gone were the "I love you more than anything" endings, replaced with simple "love you," or sometimes nothing at all. Her emails, once daily novels about her life and memories of us, became brief updates sent twice weekly. I noticed changes on social media too. Allison began posting pictures of nights out with people I'd never heard her mention, a coworker named Tina, a new client named Brad. Her hair was different. She'd cut her long auburn locks into a short, sophisticated style she knew I loved long. She bought a new car without consulting me, a sleek Audi convertible replacing her practical SUV. One night, after a grueling 18-hour patrol, I video called her unexpectedly. She answered looking startled, hair wet from a shower at 11 p.m. In the background, I heard what sounded like a glass clinking in our kitchen. "Is someone there with you?" I asked. "Just Tina," she said quickly. "Girls' wine night." But in the split second before she answered, I saw panic flash across her face. The same expression I'd seen on men caught in lies during interrogations. 27 Marines under my command relied on my ability to assess threats and make split-second decisions. That night, I failed to apply those same skills to my own life. May 15th, 5 months into deployment. I'll never erase this date from my memory. Our unit had just returned from a high-risk patrol in Taliban territory. My uniform was caked with dust, my eyes bloodshot from 36 hours without sleep. 3 of my men had sustained minor injuries. My sole focus was getting them proper medical attention. After ensuring they were stabilized, I finally checked my personal email at 0200 hours local time. There it was, sent from Allison's professional real estate account rather than her personal one, like I was just another business transaction to close. The email that would unmake my world had no greeting, no explanation. Just divorce papers attached and instructions to sign and return to my lawyer. 10 years of marriage, dismissed in 7 words. My hands physically shook as I opened the attachment. Standard California no-fault divorce filing. She wanted the house, half my military pension, and full ownership of our joint investment accounts. Her portion explaining the reason for divorce simply stated, irreconcilable differences. Mine was left blank, waiting for my signature. I read that document 20 times, blood pounding in my ears. This was the woman who had stood before God and our families promising until death. The woman who knew exactly what these papers would mean to me in a combat zone, thousands of miles from any support system. With adrenaline surging, I immediately checked our joint bank account. The screen loaded painfully slowly on the military network. Finally, the balance appeared. $1,246.78. 2 months earlier, it had been over $22,000. Our emergency fund and savings for a future down payment on rental properties after my service ended. The transaction history told the story. Multiple ATM withdrawals at the maximum daily limit. Transfers to her personal account that I didn't have access to. A $3,000 payment to a law firm I didn't recognize. She had been methodically extracting our financial foundation for weeks. It felt like the IED explosion I'd survived in my second tour. The same disorientation, the same physical sensation of your body being in one place while your mind splinters. Only this time, the attack came from the person I trusted most in the world. I stumbled outside the communications tent into the dark Afghan night. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process. The distant sound of artillery seemed appropriate background music to the destruction of my personal life. Jake found me sitting against the perimeter wall staring at nothing. He took one look at my face and sat down silently beside me. After several minutes, I wordlessly handed him my phone with the email open. He read it and cursed under his breath. "This isn't right, Mason. Something's seriously wrong here." Jake reminded me about my emergency account, the one Allison didn't know existed. "Listen to me. You need to protect yourself now. This isn't just about emotions. This is about your future." But Jake went further than advice. Without telling me initially, he contacted his cousin Scott in San Diego and asked him to drive by our house. "Just to check things out," he said. 3 days later, while on a security detail, my phone buzzed with photos from Scott. The images confirmed what some part of me already suspected but couldn't face. A glossy black BMW M4 was parked in our driveway, a car I'd never seen before. The American flag I'd hung on our porch, the one that had draped my father's casket before being presented to me, was gone. Through our living room window, Scott had managed to capture an image of Allison laughing on our couch, wine glass in hand. But it was the second photo that brought me to my knees, requiring Jake to pull me behind a barricade as my legs gave out. There was Allison in our home, being embraced by a man in uniform. Marine Corps dress blues with captain's bars clearly visible on his shoulders. As the image focused, recognition hit me like physical blow. Captain Daniel Harrison, my former commanding officer who had personally signed my deployment orders. The same man who had clapped me on the shoulder at my deployment ceremony and said, "Don't worry about anything back home, Williams. We take care of our own." He had indeed taken care of things by moving into my house and sleeping in my bed with my wife while I was fighting in a war zone he had sent me to. Marines are trained for strategic thinking even in crisis. When your patrol is ambushed, you don't fire blindly. You assess, plan, and execute with precision. I applied that same discipline to my personal ambush. Instead of sending an emotional response to Allison, I contacted a JAG officer, a military lawyer, through secure channels. Using my emergency account, I retained Sarah Goldstein, a civilian attorney in San Diego who specialized in military divorces. I forwarded everything I had, the email, bank statements, and the damning photos. "Don't tip your hand," Sarah advised during our satellite call. "California is a no-fault state, but the financial misconduct and the military angle give us leverage. We need more evidence." For the next 2 weeks, I performed my duties mechanically during the day while planning my counteroffensive at night. I documented every unusual transaction going back 6 months. I had Scott continue surveillance, photographing Harrison's car at my house on multiple occasions. I even requested my phone records to document the declining frequency of Allison's calls. Then I did something I'd never done in 12 years of service. I requested emergency leave for family hardship. My commanding officer, aware of the situation through the JAG office, approved it immediately. Within 72 hours, I was on a transport to Germany, then a commercial flight to the States. No one knew I was coming home. Not Allison, not Harrison, not even their attorney. The element of surprise is critical in both military and matrimonial warfare. I landed at San Diego International on a Thursday at 2:14 p.m. I didn't call anyone, didn't stop anywhere. I took a taxi directly to our Coronado neighborhood, to the house we'd bought 3 years earlier with my combat pay bonus as the down payment. The home looked different already. The flowering bushes I'd planted were gone, replaced with modern landscaping. A new security system sign stood in the yard. My heart pounded as I approached the front door, still wearing my desert camo uniform, sand from Afghanistan still embedded in my boots. I still had my key. Standing there, I felt the weight of all my combat experience settle into a strange calm. My hand didn't shake as I inserted the key. 10 years of marriage about to end in the next few moments. The door opened silently. I'd always kept the hinges well-oiled. Music played from our sound system. Not Allison's usual country music, but classical, which she'd always said was pretentious. The smell of unfamiliar cologne hung in the air. I moved silently through the entryway toward the living room, and there they were, in perfect domestic harmony. Allison curled up on our sectional sofa, laughing at something Harrison had said. They were drinking wine, from the glasses we'd received as wedding gifts. A half-empty bottle of expensive Cabernet sat between them. But what truly gutted me wasn't their physical proximity. It was seeing Harrison wearing my Marine Corps marathon hoodie, the one I'd earned by running 26.2 miles with a 50-pound pack to raise money for wounded warriors. He wore my accomplishment, my sacrifice, like it was a casual piece of loungewear. Allison saw me first. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on our hardwood floor. Harrison spun around, face draining of color as he registered my presence. For several seconds, nobody moved. The classical music continued its sophisticated melody, a surreal soundtrack to this tableau of betrayal. I remained perfectly still in the archway. Combat teaches you breath control, the ability to steady your aim even as adrenaline floods your system. I called on that training now. When I finally spoke, my voice was unnervingly calm. "Captain Harrison, I believe you're in violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 134, Paragraph 99. Military precision in citing the exact article and paragraph regarding adultery." Harrison recognized it immediately. His face contorted with the realization that this wasn't just a marital issue. It was a career-ending offense for an officer. Allison began crying, a high-pitched sound that seemed performative rather than genuine. "Mason, please, it's not what you think." I silently handed her a folder containing the evidence my lawyer had compiled. Bank statements showing transfers to Harrison's accounts, hotel receipts, restaurant bills for two while I ate MREs in the dust. The final page showed photographs of them together dating back 3 months, time-stamped from our own security system that forwarded images to my cloud storage. "I'll be staying at Jake's cousin's place tonight," I told them, my voice still mechanically level. "I expect both of you to be gone by Aero 900 tomorrow. My lawyer will contact yours." Harrison stood, attempting some semblance of military bearing despite wearing my clothes in my house. "Williams, we need to discuss this like reasonable..." "That's Staff Sergeant Williams to you, sir," I interrupted. "And we have nothing to discuss. The Corps teaches us that actions have consequences. Prepare to face yours." As I turned to leave, Allison rushed forward, grabbing my arm. "You can't just show up like this and make demands. This is my house too." I looked down at her hand on my uniform, then back to her face, a face I'd once memorized and dreamed about during lonely nights in combat zones. Now it belonged to a stranger. "Your attorney will explain your legal position soon enough," I said, removing her hand from my sleeve. "I suggest you both prepare for a very different future than you planned." Walking out was the hardest thing I'd ever done, harder than combat, harder than carrying fallen comrades. But as the door closed behind me, I felt something unexpected. Not just pain, but the first faint stirring of freedom. The divorce proceedings began exactly 17 days after my surprise homecoming. Allison had clearly expected me to sign the papers without contest, a quick surrender from a battle-weary soldier too exhausted to fight on yet another front. She had drastically miscalculated. Her attorney, a polished woman with an expensive suit and dismissive manner, argued that as a real estate professional who had maintained our household while I served, Allison deserved the house, half of my military pension, despite our relatively short marriage, and alimony based on my combat pay rates. They portrayed me as an absent husband who had chosen career over marriage, volunteering for deployments to escape domestic responsibilities. They even suggested my war experiences might make me unstable and unsuitable for managing our joint assets. Sarah Goldstein, my attorney, was a former military spouse herself who specialized in protecting service members' rights. She methodically dismantled their narrative with evidence of Allison's financial misconduct. Unauthorized withdrawals totaling $22,750 from joint accounts, $7,000 spent on Harrison over 3 months, including a Rolex watch. A weekend in Catalina Island charged to our credit card while I was under mortar fire. Text messages recovered from our shared cloud account discussing how to speed up the divorce before he gets back. The judge, Honorable Raymond Walters, a Vietnam veteran, reviewed the evidence with increasing displeasure evident on his face. When Allison's attorney tried to dismiss the affair as irrelevant to the financial settlement, Judge Walters removed his glasses slowly. "Counselor," he said, "while California is indeed a no-fault state, the court takes a very dim view of financial misconduct and particularly of the circumstances surrounding this divorce. Staff Sergeant Williams was deployed in service to his country when these actions occurred." The ruling came down like a hammer. Not only were Allison's alimony and pension claims denied entirely, but she was ordered to repay half of the money she had withdrawn, plus my legal fees. I was awarded full ownership of the house, though it no longer felt like a home, and complete protection of my military benefits. For Captain Harrison, the consequences extended beyond the divorce court. The military takes adultery seriously, particularly when it involves a superior officer betraying a deployed subordinate. It violates the sacred trust that holds units together in combat, the assurance that your brothers in arms are protecting, not exploiting, what you leave behind. I filed a formal complaint through the chain of command, providing the same evidence presented in divorce court. Harrison faced a disciplinary board under Article 134 of the UCMJ, which addresses conduct unbecoming an officer and gentleman. The proceedings were swift and unforgiving. Harrison was demoted, lost a significant portion of his pension benefits, and received a formal reprimand that effectively ended any hope of further advancement. The Marine Corps takes care of its own, sometimes through punishment as much as protection. I took no satisfaction in Harrison's professional destruction. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about accountability and upholding the values that the uniform represents. When we deploy, we need absolute confidence that our leadership maintains the highest ethical standards. Harrison had betrayed not just me but the Corps itself. The final time I saw Allison was when she arrived to collect her personal belongings from the house. Professional movers loaded her furniture into a truck while she supervised, sunglasses hiding her eyes despite the overcast day. She approached me as I stood monitoring the process from the driveway. Her designer outfit and perfect makeup couldn't conceal how small she suddenly appeared, diminished somehow, as if betrayal had physically reduced her. "I know you won't believe me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But I am sorry, Mason. I never meant for things to go this far." The anger that had sustained me for months had faded, leaving behind a hollow feeling. "Why?" I asked simply. "We had 10 years. You could have waited until I came home. You could have told me you wanted out face to face." Her answer came after a long pause. "I was lonely and scared. Every time you deployed, I'd have nightmares about men in dress uniforms knocking on our door. Daniel made me feel safe." It wasn't sufficient justification. Nothing could be. But it offered a glimpse into her reality. The military spouse life isn't for everyone. The constant fear, the endless waiting, the recurring separations, they create a unique strain that breaks many marriages. I had trained for combat stress. Allison had never trained for the battle of waiting and uncertainty. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I told her as she walked toward her new car. No longer the BMW, but a modest Honda. Harrison, I learned, had quickly moved on to someone else once his career imploded. Affairs built on betrayal rarely survived their exposure to daylight. As her car disappeared down our street for the final time, I felt an unexpected sensation. The first deep breath I'd taken in months. The war, both overseas and at home, was finally over. I won't pretend I emerged unscathed. For 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I barely left the house. The same home that had once represented our future now felt like a museum of broken promises. Every room held memories that ambushed me without warning. Jake's cousin Scott stopped by daily, sometimes with other Marines from my unit. They brought food, checked that I was eating, made sure I wasn't spiraling too deeply. The Corps takes care of its own, this time through the quiet support of brotherhood. The military trains us extensively for combat trauma. We have resources, protocols, support systems for PTSD from battlefield experiences. But there's no established treatment program for the trauma of personal betrayal. It's a different kind of ambush, one that targets your identity, your trust, your very understanding of your life's narrative. At my lowest point, I considered leaving the Marines. Everything felt contaminated. My service, my sacrifice, even my identity as a Marine had been leveraged as part of the betrayal. What was it all for if the foundation it was built on had been a lie? My turning point arrived unexpectedly on a rainy Sunday morning. Major Gonzalez from the Wounded Warrior Battalion called. They needed an instructor for a new training program aimed at helping veterans transition back to civilian life. My first instinct was to decline. I could barely manage my own transition back to reality. Then I remembered something my father told me after his final tour in Desert Storm. When wounded, keep moving. It's the only way to prevent infection. He wasn't talking just about physical wounds. I accepted the position, more out of discipline than desire. That first day teaching transitioning Marines saved me. Standing before 20 young service members, seeing their eagerness, their vulnerability, their trust, it reconnected me to the core values that had drawn me to the Corps in the first place. Honor, courage, commitment. These weren't just recruiting slogans. They were principles that existed independent of any individual's failure to uphold them. I sold the house within 2 months. Too many ghosts haunted its rooms. With the proceeds, I purchased a small apartment closer to the base and donated a significant portion to a foundation supporting families of deployed service members. Turning personal pain into purpose became my mission. I joined a support group for service members experiencing divorce. The statistics shocked me. Military divorce rates run significantly higher than civilian rates. The constant separations, the stress, the diverging life experiences, they erode even the strongest foundations. I wasn't alone in my experience, just in how publicly it had unfolded. There I met retired Gunnery Sergeant Robert Martinez, who had experienced an almost identical betrayal during his final deployment to Iraq. His perspective transformed my healing. Betrayal doesn't define you, Williams. How you recover does. You can let this make you bitter or better. Choose better. Choose. Those words became my mantra as I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I focused on my career, eventually transferring to the training division specializing in combat stress management, helping Marines develop psychological resilience for deployment. The irony wasn't lost on me, but the personal experience enhanced my effectiveness. I started a mentoring program for young Marines preparing for their first deployment, incorporating financial protection measures and relationship maintenance strategies. If my experience could help even one service member avoid a similar fate, the pain served a purpose. Dating didn't come easily. Trust isn't a switch you can flip back on. The hypervigilance that serves you well in combat becomes toxic in relationships, looking for betrayal behind every text message, every unexplained absence. 2 years after that devastating email in Afghanistan, I met Dr. Sophia Martinez, a psychologist working with veteran PTSD programs. Her father had been career military, giving her an authentic understanding of service life. We're taking things slowly, building a foundation of radical transparency and honest communication. I remain in the Marines, serving in a capacity that allows me to support other service members. The uniform still represents everything I believe in. The actions of 2 people who betrayed its values couldn't diminish its meaning in my life. I've learned that the greatest battles are rarely fought against external enemies. They're fought within ourselves, against despair, against cynicism, against the temptation to surrender our capacity for trust. These internal firefights don't earn medals, but winning them is crucial to surviving not just as a Marine, but as a human being. Looking back now, I can identify critical lessons from this crucible, insights that might help others facing similar challenges. First, always maintain financial independence, especially in high-risk professions like military service. That emergency account, $15,000 that Allison never knew about, literally saved my future. Every Marine under my command now hears this advice. Maintain a separate account with at least 3 months of living expenses. It's not about distrust. It's about prudent preparation for contingencies. Second, documentation is your strongest ally. Digital banking meant I could monitor our accounts from Afghanistan, providing immediate evidence of financial misconduct. Keep records of major purchases, account numbers, passwords. During deployment, schedule regular financial check-ins. Technology makes infidelity harder to hide, but also easier to detect. Third, build a support network beyond your romantic relationship. Jake, Scott, and my unit brothers provided critical support when my primary relationship collapsed. Military service naturally creates strong bonds. Leverage them when needed. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's tactical resource allocation. Fourth, understand the unique vulnerabilities of military relationships. Deployment creates prolonged separations, communication challenges, and divergent life experiences. Address these realities openly with your partner before problems arise. The Military Family Resource Center offers relationship resilience training that I now recommend to every service member in my command. Fifth, prepare legal protections before deployment. Every Marine should consult with base legal services to review powers of attorney, financial authorizations, and benefit designations before shipping out. What seems unnecessary in peacetime becomes critical during crisis. Finally, and most importantly, betrayal doesn't have to define your story. It's a devastating chapter, yes, but not the conclusion. Your response determines whether it destroys you or becomes the foundation for something stronger, more authentic, and ultimately more valuable. Today, I lead pre-deployment workshops for Marines and their families about relationship resilience and financial protection. I tell them my story not to make them paranoid, but to make them prepared. The look of recognition I sometimes see, the slight shift in posture from a service member who's noticed concerning patterns, tells me this pain now serves a purpose. What happened with Allison and Harrison? Their relationship imploded within months of the divorce. Affairs built on betrayal carry the seeds of their own destruction. The very qualities that enable the initial betrayal ultimately undermine any foundation for lasting connection. I don't wish them ill. That burden is too heavy to carry alongside everything else. For those watching who might be struggling with betrayal, military or civilian, know this: you will survive. The pain doesn't disappear, but it transforms. Initially, it's all-consuming, like a sucking chest wound that makes each breath agony. Eventually, it becomes a scar, still visible, occasionally tender but no longer life-threatening. It becomes part of your story, rather than your entire identity. To my fellow service members, watch each other's backs, not just in combat but in life. If you notice a battle buddy exhibiting the same warning signs I ignored, say something. It might save them immeasurable pain. And to anyone whose loved one wears the uniform, your role is vital, challenging, and often thankless. If you cannot sustain the commitment through deployment, end it honorably before it becomes betrayal. Our nation's warriors deserve at least that much respect. If my story resonated with you, please share your experiences in the comments. How have you recovered from betrayal? What strategies helped you rebuild trust? What warnings did you miss? This conversation extends beyond my personal experience. It's about creating a community of resilience and wisdom. Subscribe for more real stories from the front lines, not just of war, but of life. This is Staff Sergeant Mason Williams signing off.